Welcome back, everyone. This is When Men Open Up, a show where we are redefining manhood through transparency. My name is Dominique and I'm with my guy, Dexter Pagans.
Man, what's good?
But the topic for today is I am not a punching bag. And those of you that's wondering what is this all about, we really want to discuss an important topic that I don't think is discussed enough.
Sure.
But it is the topic of men being victims of domestic abuse, domestic violence. And one of the many problems with this is obviously is wrong, it's unacceptable, but it seems as though it looks a little different compared to women being victims of domestic abuse or domestic violence. And part of that reason is, we don't see men in that light. We don't see men as victims. And the question is why. We don't look at men as victims when it comes down to domestic abuse or domestic violence, is because, hey, you're bigger than a woman, and you're more macho and you're stronger and so forth. But when it comes down to, and we're going to go over many different things, when it comes down to domestic abuse, domestic violence, it can be physically, it can be physical, it can be emotionally, it can be sexual as well. But there's a lot of men for different reasons who are experiencing this. But another big thing is they're not coming forward with it as well for different reasons.
Yeah, and I think it really goes back to what you said, that we're men, and in many cases, bigger than your significant other. There's a stature, but there's also a stigma associated with men who are abused. It almost sounds weird to even say it, but just because it's weird to say it does not mean that it doesn't happen. And I think one of the predominant issues that men struggle with in this area, as far as opening up, is the ridicule associated with sharing the story. And so it's almost this catch-22. Do I say something? Do I report it? If I defend myself, I'm going to suffer the consequences of people talking negative and really being viewed in a negative light either way it goes. Yeah. And so, it's my belief that on today, we'll cover some things that address those areas and hopefully bring a sense of relief to the brothers who are in those predicaments. And not only the brothers who are in those predicaments, but these are conversations that we have to have amongst ourselves and with our young men, our sons. It's an interesting conversation that I think is often overlooked.
Most definitely. Yeah. And when we say overlooked, it's definitely something, when it comes down to that type of behavior, it's more acceptable, it's more tolerable. And we should have these conversations because some of us we have kids as well, and we have to I remember in high school in the hallways, guys for whatever reason getting their behind whooped, getting hit on and so forth. But we didn't think too much of it. That he'll be fine, he can handle it. But there's a lot of men that's growing up and still having that perspective, that view on things. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's causing a lot of issues. But like we said before, and you hit on, is that ridicule. And the question is always why. If you're a grown man, why are you not leaving that situation? Just leave. If you're being treated like that, just leave. But it's the shame. Men deal with shame as well. It's the shame of, if other people hear about this, what are they gonna think about me? How can I, as a man, how can I step forward and even go to the police and say this? Are they gonna even believe me? Are they gonna question me and act like I did something?
Sure. Yeah.
And with the leaving as well, there are so many different things that makes it difficult just for someone to just up and leave a relationship. It's never that easy to just up and leave a relationship. Sure. And we have to understand there's several other factors involved. One factor is simply kids. If I, report this and, what about my kids? If I'm going through this, my kids may go through this as well. I don't want to. It's a lot of men when it come down to the court system. They don't believe in it. They don't really believe that. I may not have custody of my kids. You know what I'm saying? They may not. They may not side with me. So it's not that cut and dry to just for someone to just up and leave. This is not an excuse. This is explaining and expressing understanding that, hey, look, it's more factors involved as well.
And I think, we as people, because I don't want to limit this and say that this is just a male perspective.
Right.
I feel like it goes both ways with what I'm about to say. But one of the things that I believe keeps men from, say, calling the police is the implications afterwards.
Right.
We say things like, well, it was just a little disagreement. Mm-hmm. And that little disagreement doesn't warrant, my wife, my girlfriend going to jail. And now here we are jumping through hoops, worrying about child care. Right. And, now you got to go to court and all this other stuff. And so now you're not only losing time, but now you're losing money. Mm-hmm. But the issue is that we fail to address the behavior and the reasoning behind why the response is to get violent. Why is the if we have a disagreement or if it escalates, why are we getting physical with one another? And so because we're not having that conversation, what it becomes a pattern. And I think it also sets a false narrative for the young boys who see this. And what I mean by that is that I grew up in a household like many men, we're told not to hit a woman, and so I believe that wholeheartedly. You don't hit back. But the reality is that nobody ever said what to do if you're being attacked, and so the young boy who oftentimes is told if somebody hits you, defend yourself, especially as
right.
it relates to another male, what lesson is he learning and what is he internalizing when he sees the male in his life being beaten on by maybe his mother? Mm-hmm. That's a weird conversation, and it creates a very unique situation that oftentimes we haven't equipped ourselves with how to engage that conversation, and not only that conversation, but what do we do in that situation?
That's real heavy, because when they're in that type of environment, and based upon how you deal with it, yeah. it is learned behavior, and it can be passed on, and your son can grow up and actually he can be a victim of that as well. True. But where does domestic violence really stem from? And it really stems from that control, that power. Mm-hmm. It's a form of manipulation and so forth. I actually know someone who shared a story about the mother of his kids, mm-hmm. and how she will always use the kids as a way of control. Mm-hmm. And she really just wanted her way, and she would do spiteful things in order to really control his life. Mm-hmm. And he said, I kind of got to the point where, she's pretty much a ticking time bomb. Yeah. And I pretty much became numb to it all. And he became numb to it because he just said, I just got tired with it. Yeah. I just got tired of worrying about the kids. I got tired of dealing with when I'm going to see the kids and so forth and so forth. Mm. But that is a form of abuse as well.
Oh, definitely.
And the bad thing is what he highlighted. I just became numb to it. Mm. So now he's to the point where, I just deal with it. Yeah. She just has her way. She just does what she want to do. And he just said, I just don't want to have anything else to do with it.
That's interesting that you said that, because I know somebody in a similar situation. They actually left, but their frustration is that, why do I have to always be the one who takes the loss? Mm. Meaning, like, why do I have to leave? This is just as much my house as it is yours. These are our kids, mm-hmm. Our kids, not your kids, my kids. These are our kids. So why am I the one having to essentially restart? Yeah. And I think when we factor in the tangible cost the monetary cost, you know, to relocate. And, you know, sometimes people just make this decision that it's not worth it.
Right.
And much like your friend, he just becomes numb and says, well, you know, every day is not like this, you know. And so, you know, it's tough, you know, and I really think that in order for us to really see changes in this area, we have to challenge a lot of the social norms. You know, I know recently that whole issue with Bow Wow came out, you know, and, you know, when his picture was posted, and, you know, I don't know the background as far as why the altercation started, but, you know, he had all the marks on his face, and people were like, man, you know, looks like Wolverine got you, or something like that. Right. You know, and we will always be stuck in this place where we're uncomfortable about having this conversation, especially if the first reaction is to laugh and joke on the person.
Most definitely.
Because at the end of the day, if the shoe was on the other foot, I'm pretty sure that the response would have been a lot different, you know.
Most definitely, and it really has to get to the point where it's equal on both sides.
Definitely.
Hopefully, we'll move more and more closer to that. But the fact of the matter is, it's unacceptable on both sides to hit, to make threats, and so forth. But we have to really, you know, I think the next thing is really recognizing the behavior and the warning signs as well. You know, are there any physical threats? You know, are there is the person, you know, constantly beating you down emotionally or mentally? You know, is that a toxic environment for your kids? You get what I'm saying? Even putting your kids in that situation, you know, would that be acceptable for your kids to go through? And it's just so many things that are just being thrown at you. The list goes on and on and on. But we have to really recognize the behaviors and recognize the things that's uncalled for, and really ask ourselves, is this really acceptable? Is this really healthy? You know, is this, am I safe? Do I feel safe? If I don't feel safe, why don't I feel safe? You know, if this is the person that I love, you know, is it right not to feel safe? And this is a question. These are questions that you just go through your process and have an understanding for, because then it'll help you dig in different other places. You know, long term, where is this going to really turn to? Do I hesitate to express and be myself? Why do I have this hesitation in being myself? So the list goes on when it comes down to recognizing that behavior.
You know, one of the things I think is that we don't always have the best image of ourselves. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when we're in certain environments, we believe that that's the best that we deserve, you know. So if we're in abusive relationships, there's tendencies to believe that, well, she, he, whatever, this is the best person for me, and that's just the way things have to go. And we really have to examine, first of all, what we believe about ourselves. You know, when we were preparing for this message, I was thinking about a very popular Bible scripture, I think, that people often use at like weddings and stuff. And it was 1 Corinthians, the love chapter, you know, 13. And it starts talking about some of the attributes of love. You know, it says that love is patient, love is kind, it holds no record. But it says it also that love does not dishonor. And when we have the wrong image of love, you can't say that I love this person and disgrace them in the same mention. You know, if you're abusing somebody, there's going to be evidence of the abuse, whether it be mental, whether it be physical. And when you're disgracing the person, how can you in like fashion say, I love this person? And I really think that it boils down to, one, wrong self-image, and then two, not a real proper understanding of love. What happened to all of the other alternatives to abuse? You know, when does a serious conversation happen where, you know, we're not yelling, we're not, you know, getting in each other's faces, but we're having a difficult conversation, but we're doing it in a civil manner. One of the things that I share with people, especially when I do marital counseling, I say, look, you know, arguments are a part of life. You know, disagreements are a part of life. you have to set the ground rules of engagement when you're getting ready to have an argument, a disagreement. And you both have to agree to the ground rules, because what it does is it keeps you, one, from not being physical with one another, but it also keeps you from saying something that you are not going to be able to recover from.
Right.
And so you have to have those rules and those boundaries, and consequently, I really think that it's really disappointing that it's easy to have the domestic conversation with a woman as opposed to a man. And I think that's a lot of, maybe some of my own thought processes, my own upbringing. But, with a woman, let's be honest, the first thing we say is, hey, go get your brother, get your uncle or something, we're suggesting that the reaction should be violence, essentially. But with the man, it's like, bro, I don't know what you should do, man, other than leave, and so that really speaks to the serious nature of this conversation, that a lot of men are really stuck and don't know how to proceed. Is it, do I just suffer? Do I become numb?
Yeah.
Or what controls, what implements do we put in this relationship to ensure that we're not crossing these boundaries?
And to make things worse is, we have to understand the behaviors of abusers as well. And once again, it's all based upon control.
Yeah.
And with that being said, they want to really control every element of that environment so they can continue the way things is going. So with that being said, just like somebody commented, they will isolate that person.
Yeah.
They will, they'll just control, they'll do whatever it takes to really control that person's, behavior as well. So with that being said, I think we have to do our due diligence in really standing up for one another.
True.
I mean, we see that whether we see marks on someone's face or we see peculiar or weird behavior from a person, let's not respond to that by just saying, you know what, that's none of my business. I don't want to step into that. No, I mean, if that's someone you really care about, if that's someone you really love, look into that. Even step into that person's home. Y'all consider each other brothers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, sisters, or whatever the case may be. Step into that person's home, step into that person's environment, and really see what's going on. Because for us, like you just stated, it's already difficult for us to speak out and go to somebody.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we have to have that understanding as well, and really talk to our brothers too, and just like, hey man, like, what I just seen, what you just told me, I don't think that's healthy, man. Let's dive into that real quick.
Exactly.
What's really going on? How long it's been happening? What are some things I can do for you? What do you really need? You know what I'm saying? We just go from there.
One of the things you and I often talk about is, how do you create a safe place for men to talk about these issues? Mm-hmm. And one of the responsibilities, much to what you're talking about, as these issues come up, we have to be advocates. You can't just be a one who holds on to the information. It's good to be a safe, reliable source where I can I can dump, my stuff and say, well, I know Dominique is going to keep this to himself. But the reality is that if I'm going back into an environment that can be detrimental, there has to be some type of accountability where you say, hey man, look, as a friend, as a brother, let me talk to you about this. Right. Because here's the thing, let's be honest, we're talking about men who are victims of domestic abuse, but the reality is, what's keeping that man from snapping? What's keeping that man from saying, you know what, nah, I'm not going to let you hit me, and you act like this is what you want, so I'm gonna give it to you.
Right.
And we need to be able to almost see the future and recognize that, hey man, if we don't do something, it's headed in that direction.
Most definitely.
And I really think that once again, the accountability is the key. We have to go deeper in our friendships. A lot of our friendships are very superficial, on the surface level. We talk sports and all of that other stuff, but I need to know about your overall well-being.
Most definitely. And the thing is, when we have that type of position, when we're friends with someone, when we consider someone our brother, you have the ability to really intervene. You have the ability to really shift things. So with that being said, it's just like when we had that episode on peacemakers, let's go in and really see what's going on. And I really do believe we also have to go back and really have this conversation with our kids as well, and not just get in the habit of just stopping and saying, you know what, just don't put your hands on a woman. Really teaching our boys to have some standards and set some boundaries, and really teach them how to verbalize that, and how to communicate that, what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, really teach them how to communicate that and really setting that standard.
One of the things that I think will help in that area, one of the things I tell my sons all the time is that you're responsible for your reactions. If something happens to you, there is a split amount of time where you process it, and then you make a decision as far as what you're going to do. And I think we would find ourselves in a very beneficial position if we take advantage of those moments and those opportunities to ask ourselves, okay, is my response, is it necessary, and is it going to yield the type of results that I want? A lot of times, let's be honest, there is a temporary gratification in doing the wrong thing, but the long-term consequences are not worth the reaction. A lot of times we make split-second reactions that ultimately cost us everything. And so we have to get to the point where we recognize those things. And so, one of the things, and as my sons get a little older and we have this conversation, one, you're not a punching bag. But the reality is that you have to understand your worth. Recognize that what direction this conversation is headed in. You can almost tell when things are getting off course in a conversation, when they're escalating. And so have the wherewithal to really back and say, you know what, this is going in a bad direction. Let me be the one to step away from this. And once again, I talked earlier about having a ground rules for how do we engage, when we're having a disagreement. Let that be one of the ground rules where say, hey, if it gets too heated, one of us needs to step away, and I'm going to go ahead and volunteer to be the one who backs away.
Most definitely. Conflict resolution, we done programs on that, is always important. It's always important understanding how you handle conflict, how the person that you communicate handle conflict, and understanding what all you all need to set and implement to make sure you all can accomplish whatever goal that you set. I really want everybody, if you're enjoying this video, to share the video, share the broadcast with anyone. And I really want people to really, Google and search. It's not a lot of groups when it comes down to men that's victims of domestic abuse or domestic violence, but really just take time out to, see what's out there, see what groups are out there, see what support groups are out there, what organizations are out there, what resources are out there, because you never know if you may come across someone who's a victim to that, and because you have that knowledge, now you know what you can provide them, because you done that research, and now you're able to provide that information to them. Because many of us, we don't know the resources.
True.
There's a lot of things that we deal with on a regular basis, and we don't think that, there's a resource for that. And I really challenge people to really utilize those resources and really look into those resources and so forth.
With that being said, also as it relates to the resources, once again, you have to see yourself as valuable and understand that you might not have the skills to work out this situation. And that's what a resource is for. It's to help you in the matter, in the situation. If certain things have been going on for a course of time with no change, then that might be the indication that I need to introduce a resource. And so, and once again, we have to be advocates for one another. One of my rules for my personal accountability is that I don't ask advice from people who I know is going to give me wrong advice. You know, I really ask people from a vantage point that think a little bit more mature than I want. I don't want anybody to agree with if I'm leaning towards making the wrong decision. I don't want anybody saying, Dexter, do that. You know, I need somebody to say, hey, look, there's a better way, a better approach to this. Because once again, I'm in a relationship with my wife and we're building something. And we've talked about this before, you know, in conversations about relationships. If you're with that person, ultimately you're building towards something. And one of the foundations of any relationship is communication. And if it gets to a point where it becomes physical, it becomes violent, there was a breakdown in the fundamental necessity of every relationship, which is communication, you know. And so we have to examine daily what's going on in these relationships.
Yeah, and let's practice understanding. We only go by what we see, and we have this habit in society where we blame the victim. You know, you should have left, and why are you staying, and so forth. But we got to understand that there's a lot of things that we just are not aware of. So before we jump the gun, understand that there's so many other factors involved that makes things difficult. Many of us, matter of fact, everyone that's probably listening to this broadcast right now can think back in a situation where you could have easily just left. You could have easily just moved on, but you continued on dealing with whatever the case may be, and you're probably hitting yourself right now, just telling yourself, you know what, I could have left a long time ago, whether it was smaller or something big. So it was all based upon your level of understanding as well. So sometimes we stay in a situation based upon our level of understanding. It can be some other barriers and other factors involved as well. So let's practice some understanding in that. Do you have anything else you want to share, man?
No, brother, I think all that I had to share today has been said. And so really, once again, let's be advocates for one another. Let's examine our love, the meaning of love, and especially as it relates to the relationships that we're in. Are we invested in the person? And then more importantly, are you invested in your own mental and personal well-being? And I think when we start to reconcile those things, we'll start to see better relationships.
Once again, you all, this is When Men Open Up, a show where we are redefining manhood through transparency. If you have any feedback, you have any upcoming events that you would like us to participate in, you can easily inbox us on our Facebook page. You can easily DM us on Instagram. Email us at whenmenopenup@gmail.com, at whenmenopenup@gmail.com. But once again, we always appreciate you joining in. My name is Dominique and
And I'm Dexter Peggins.
and we are out. Join us next time.